Chapter 14. Peaceful Moon arrived early the next morning, having spent the night, he said, near Robinson's Mills. As he passed through Shaw's Pond, just after dawn, he'd been stopped by Solomon Hopkins, who asked him to carry a basket of morels and fiddlehead ferns and dandelion greens to his dear friend, Abigail Ludington. Hannah held the horses while Peaceable took the basket inside. Sybil thought that was strange. Why hadn't Peaceable just handed the basket to Hannah? "Treasure," said Papa at the sight of the morels. "How are things with Solomon?" Peaceable smiled. He said, "Tell Abigail that morels and scrambled eggs make a feast for the gods." "Well, Solomon is a dear friend," Mama told Peaceable. Sybil thought that was an exaggeration. "Let me make you up a parcel of morels to take home to your family, Mr. Moon." Mama took the basket into the larder and emerged with a bundle of morels in a length of lintel toweling. Peaceable wouldn't stay to breakfast. He took 2 warm biscuits and headed outside. "My Star and Moon need to get home to their hay beds," he said to Hannah. Quite suddenly, Hannah threw her arms around him and whispered something Sybil couldn't hear. Peaceable climbed up behind his black horses and pressed off east toward Quaker Hill. In the kitchen, Hannah dabbed at her eye with the back of her hand. "What?" said Hannah, seeing the sisters stare. "You're sad he's gone?" asked Molly. "He helped me get away from the Prossers," Hannah said quietly. "I'd be indebted to the devil himself if he did that for me." "There!" said Mama's voice from the larder. She emerged into the daylight of the kitchen with a small cylinder of paper in her hand. "Feast for the gods, indeed! Molly, fetch the book of Greek myths." Solomon Hopkins had slipped the tiny, rolled-up note into the bottom of the basket of morels, woven into the strands that formed the basket. Becky gasped. Why didn't he tell Peaceable it was there? "Maybe he didn't want to trust Peaceable," said Mama. When Molly returned with the beautiful book, Papa had Solomon's paper unscrolled. Sybil couldn't tell anything from it. Instead of words, it had numbers all over it, written in rows the way words normally were. "Now then, Captain Molly," Papa said gently, "page 112. Molly set the book on the table, thumbed through to 112, and spread the pages under a careful hand. "It's the story of Apollo," she said, "the sun god riding on his chariot across the sky." 112, 139, 217, 453, 323, 627, 93, 481, 165, 97, 24, 590, 11, 376, 86, 221, 7. "What's the word?" asked Papa. "The underlined word." The girls pored over the book. Becky skimmed the page and found it. "Sunrise," she said. Now, 139. "Icarus flying too close to the sun," Sybil said. "Burning." 217. "Houses." 453. "It's just a big letter R." "Maybe that's for Reading or Ridgefield," said Papa. "Next is 323. E," Becky said. "Reading." Observant Archie said, "They are burning houses in Reading? Where's Reading?" "Not far," said Papa. "They are on their way north to Danbury." Sybil could spare little thought for the massive surprise of learning that the Greek myths book, the one Mr. J could spare because he had one of his own from General Washington, held the key to a code and used to send a message through Peaceable. The British had marched to Reading, Connecticut, before most civilized people had breakfast. They were looking for rebels and trying to kill boys in their farms old enough to become soldiers who might fight them. A patriot on a hilltop in Bethel had managed to trick the British into thinking that great regiments of soldiers awaited them. They were held up for 2 hours waiting for the attack before moving on. The message ended with the British marching north to Danbury. General Arnold was headed there to confront them. A depiction of the Battle of Bunker Hill in Massachusetts, 1775. When the devil is he getting there, I'd like to know, Papa burst out. He paced the room. Where are they going after that, Abby? He asked Mama. What's he after? That rascal Tryon, Sybil. Who's he meeting at Peekskill? Is Hal coming north, Becky? What's Jay doing over in Fishkill, Captain Molly? They all sat there gaping. Mama set the baby on the floor to sit among the boys and their toys. She put her arms around Papa. He wasn't really asking them anything, just trying to sort through the entire story in his mind as if it were a map with sections all unexplored. Be ready, Papa said. We will be, Mama answered. Papa went out. He checked on the horses in the paddock and the oxen and the cows in the pasture, the seeds and weeds in the field, everything springing up now that it was growing season. From the back window, they could see him walking, pacing, listening, thinking. With 4 hours to sundown, he harnessed up chess and checkers, hitched them to the plow, and carried on with the plowing. He must have wanted to go, 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 but a soldier needed to wait for his orders. Leave him alone, Mama said to Sybil. So Sybil sat on the back steps next to the lying down drum and thought about the information. She imagined secret trails, an almost invisible path made up of people, Solomon Hopkins, Peaceable Moon, and Hannah Prosser, and Papa. When Sybil thought of what lay ahead, she knew one thing for sure. The regiment was going to be mustered together here. The plan included Becky and Moses and Mistress Carver and a chain of alarm, maybe clanging bells or honking conch shells or clattering pots and pans. She knew she could make the ride faster alone. If she did, Moses could go along and help Eleazar, one more man for battle. Becky could stay on, watch for Mama. With her right finger, Sybil drew the letter R on her chest. R for resolution. R for revolution. She would ride the whole route herself or die trying. Inside the house, the family cooked the way they did when a storm was on the way. Mama set extra bread to rise, and Becky kneaded the risen dough, divided it into rounds, and covered them up again. The boys were kept busy fetching and carrying from the cellar. Dried beef, onions, potatoes, carrots, turnips, and the absolute barrel bottom of the apples. Becky made pies from the mince preserved in December. 3 pots of stew simmered over the fire. The men of the regiment would be there soon enough, devouring it all. Mama brought in the washing she had hung out that morning, dry now in the longest stretch of sun they'd had all week, and Molly ironed and folded. Hank said, "What are we doing so much housework for?" "To be ready," Molly said, but she didn't really know the answer. What was the answer? It felt good to be busy. None of them had any idea what they would be called upon to do tomorrow. In a way, it was a proud feeling. In a way, it was very, very frightening. As evening came on, they continued working. While Papa stayed out in the field, Sybil helped with the milking, then came into the house. "I could get used to wearing these breeches," she told Mama. Mama shook her head. "A girl needs to become a woman, not a man," she said. Sybil rolled her eyes. "I could lead a regiment." "Thank goodness you won't," said Mama. Sybil thought a moment, but only said, "The rain's beginning again." Mama smiled. What a spring. It was just a drizzle, but it made the night come faster, so it made Papa retire sooner from the field. When he came in, the table was set with stew and fresh bread. All seemed strangely well on the surface of things. The fire glowed in the hearth, and the room was still warm from the sunny day. Everything seemed clean and orderly. Even the boys had had their Saturday baths and sat shining and ready for bed. But Hannah wasn't there. It seemed like they all knew at once that she was gone. Sybil bolted up from her chair and headed for the door. Somehow, in the last light of day, she glimpsed a movement in the distance across the fields and chased after her, the breeches letting her run fast. At first, Hannah ran too, and then she slowed and walked back toward Sybil. "What?" she said flatly. "Vermont," said Sybil, "or off to tell Prosser our plans." Hannah's face showed her how wrong she was. "Family business," Hannah said fiercely. "I said it, and I meant it." "How do you know the way?" asked Sybil. Hannah looked at her and waited. "Enoch?" Sybil guessed. Hannah nodded. "Then you'll be safe," said Sybil. "I wish it was me." Hannah laughed. Sybil pulled out the Daughter of Liberty medal that Molly had made and pressed it into Hannah's hand. "Don't let anybody see this until you know you are safe," she said. She turned on her heel and walked back toward the house. "Don't forget me," called Hannah. "Don't you forget me," said Sybil. Around the table, her family sat waiting, eating. She pulled her chair up and tucked into her supper and found herself unable to speak a word. Mama spoke up. "She's got food and warm things," she said. "I saw to that." As the idea sank in that Hannah was gone, off on a long and dangerous journey, lightning flashed and thunder came rolling across the night sky. The rain came down in giant splats, then settled into a steady downpour. Becky took the little boys to bed, and when she came back downstairs, she stood before Mama and Papa and said, "We have to talk about the plan." She wanted to go to Leeser's mother. "If the regiment is called out, she'll be there alone. Either I want to bring her here or I want to go there. She's going to be my mother-in-law someday. I can't have her left sitting alone through some long battle, waiting to hear the worst kind of news. If something happens to Lisa or Moses or the others, I want to be there with her." "Oh, my dear," said Mama, "that is kind." "Who's going to take your leg of the route?" Molly asked, sounding hopeful and fearful all at once. "Solomon might go to stay with Mistress Hazen," said Papa. "There's no need for you to go, and your mother may need you here." "I've been thinking too," said Sybil. "If Becky took Kay, he'd be tired just when Papa needs him fresh. Better to take just Lady Jane the whole way around." "You take the first part and let Deb Carver take the rest," said Papa. "But that leaves me at the Carvers and leaves Mistress Carver here." "Listen," said Mama. She stood and went to the door, her face turned to the northeast and the road from Danbury. Then came the hoofs, fast and loud and nearing. Out of the gloom, a white-faced, storm-soaked men charged toward the door. "Henry Ludington! Colonel Ludington!"